setting and reaching a money goal, try the SMART system for organizing your approach. S is for specific. What exactly is the goal? I want to save a down payment to buy my first house. M is for measurable. How will you know when you're done? I want to save $50,000. A is for achievable. Well, I'm going to have to cut spending in a few places, but I can save $1,000 a month. R is for relevant. Raising my kid in a home that we own is important for me and for her. I want her to grow up in the same place if we can afford it. And T is time. How long is it going to take? I think I can do this in about 4 years. Thinking through each of those letters is a great way to set yourself up for success when you're making money plans. For more tips on saving more and spending less, head on over to workmoney.org. Till next time, this is Carrie Joy saying, take good care.
You're listening to WCPT 820, because facts matter.
The following program, Collaboraction Radio, is sponsored by Collaboraction, and to the extent applicable, their guests. The views and opinions expressed therein do not necessarily reflect those of Heartland Signal, LLC, or its management.
Hello, and welcome to Collaboraction Radio at the intersection of art, activism, and social change. Thank you for joining us on WCPT 820 AM, Chicago's progressive talk radio, also streaming live on Facebook and WCPT.com. So head over to Collaboraction. Anthony just tagged all of us. So if you want to see our pretty faces, go ahead and go there. You want to see this. You want to see that pretty face. Head over to our Facebook to watch live with us. And afterwards, it'll also be available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and everywhere else you get your digital content. So if you got to run, but you're excited about this episode, because you should be, you can catch it next week. My name is Beverly Dines. I'm the COO and Managing Director of Collaboraction. Collaboraction is a 28-year-old nonprofit whose mission is to build knowledge, empathy, dialogue, and action around oppression and inequity through live theater, film, and radio that leverage the power of storytelling and community to cultivate positive social change. Now, a few messages from our sponsors. Collaboraction Radio is sponsored by the Joseph and Bessie Feinberg Foundation, Ruth Page Center for the Arts, Adler University, AV Chicago, and Ella Vogue. Ruth Page's The Nutcracker returns to in 3 locations this holiday season. Chicago's longest-running Nutcracker, where tens of thousands of people have loved the story of Clara and her Nutcracker for more than 50 years. Relive the magic of this beloved classic, first brought to life at Chicago's iconic Ari Crown Theater. Don't miss Ruth Page's The Nutcracker at Governor State University, at Northeastern Illinois University, and at the College of Lake County throughout November and December. You can celebrate this season with Ruth Page's The Nutcracker and grab tickets at ruthpage.org. Adler University is dedicated to advancing social justice and equipping students to leading purposeful lives through its innovative academic programs, rooted in the legacy of Alfred Adler, a pioneer of community psychology. With campuses in Chicago, Vancouver, and online, Adler University fosters a diverse, inclusive learning environment where students gain the skills to become socially responsible practitioners, engaging communities to improve health and well-being. Discover how Adler University empowers students to make meaningful impact in the world. And today's episode of Collaboraction Radio is sponsored by AV Chicago, Chicago's leading provider of AV production and event management services, as well as Ella Vogue. Ella Vogue is a purpose-driven destination and event management company that seeks to become a trusted and strategic ally to your business needs as they delight your audience and generate impactful outcomes. After our show today, if you feel impassioned and want to join the conversation, Collaboration Radio is made possible by donors and members like you. Email radio@collaboraction.org or go to www.collaboraction.org to learn more. We have a couple of exciting announcements and updates heading into this week with Giving Tuesday being on December 3rd. And I'm sure if you've already heard about Giving Tuesday, you know that this time of year, incredible organizations like Collaboration are looking to our supporters, whether you have been a longtime listener or just started listening. Please consider donating. In this Giving Tuesday, Lottie Vidney has partnered with Collaboration from December 3rd to December 8th. And so if you haven't heard of Lottie Vidney, they are a woman-owned luxury accessories label specializing in customizable made-to-order leather bags. Each design is crafted with sustainably sourced materials, allowing customers to create a one-of-a-kind piece. And I want to emphasize that any bag you get from Lottie Vidney is completely bespoke. There is no other piece like it. So you know you're going to get an original every time. Lottie Vidney's flagship store is located here in Lincoln Park, and its products are also available online at www.lottievidney.com. From December 3rd through December 8th, 20% of the proceeds from Lottie Vidney will go towards Collaboration in our efforts for our new house of belonging. If you are still in need of a holiday gift, for all genders, because they have backpacks and they have satchel bags and they have hand purses and they have handbags and they have briefcases. I've looked. All custom. Please consider not only getting a gift, but supporting Collaboration in the process between December 3rd and December 8th at Lottie Vidney. Additionally, Nick Tremulous's event on January 4th with Nick Tremulouse and the Prodigals, Boneyard Rhapsody, will be premiering at Metro. Proceeds from this show will go towards Collaboration's new youth music program that will be announced early next year. Yeah, so Anthony, for those of you who are watching live, is slowly pushing in on showing the awesome flyer. And there's a discount code. If you go online now, you can get the tickets for 20% off, putting in the code NIC65, and that is not case sensitive. So hurry up and get your tickets because that discount code ends tomorrow. If you are listening live, you can call in at 773-763-WCPT. That's 773-763-9278. If you have any questions or things you want to share with us, get off your chest, or just chat, we've got an exciting show today. Now, one of the most exciting announcements we've had in recent history is the reason we're brought here today. And I'm going to let this little recording tell you why we're really excited to be here.
Trial in the Delta, The Murder of Emmett Till. The electrifying, 3-time Emmy Award-winning stage play adapted from the lost transcripts from the trial of the state of Mississippi versus the men who killed Emmett Till is now available for purchase. In 2021, co-creators G. Riley Mills, Prince Rock, and Anthony Moseley brought the lost transcripts to life after being hidden for nearly 70 years. Now, you can have a copy of the play for your own production, classroom discussions, or workshops for crucial conversations and witness lost history uncovered. Don't just watch history. Own it. Relive the drama and discover the truth. Trial in the Delta is more than just a play. It's a key moment of the launch of the civil rights movement. Click on the link below to purchase the book to join the conversation.
I wonder who recorded that. They sound really familiar. And I am joined today by those incredible collaborators, G. Riley Mills, Prince Rock, and Anthony Moseley, who have joined us to talk about this incredible achievement, Trial in the Delta, the history. And so again, if you have thoughts, if you've seen Trial in the Delta, if you've been impacted by Emmett Till's story or have a story of your own that relates, please call in 773-763-9278. Willie Prince Rock Round is a Chicago-born playwright, actor, and community activist dedicated to using art for social impact. Raised in North Lawndale, he earned a communications degree from Central State University in 2014 and began teaching video production to at-risk youth. His theater career launched with Broke Down Drone at Collaboraction's Peace Book Festival in 2019, which later had a sold-out off-Broadway run. Brown's acting debut in Her Honor Jane Byrne. Is that right? Byrne, thank you. At Looking Glass Theater earned him the Black Theater Alliance's Most Promising Actor Award. He also performed in Congo Square Theater's What to Send Up, When It Goes Down, and starred in a short film adaptation of Broke Down Drone. 2022, he and his collaborators won several Emmys for co-creating The Lost Story of Emmett Till, Trial in the Delta. As a mental health professional and founder of Mud Life, Round empowers youth while transforming lives through mentorship and storytelling. G. Riley Mills is an multi-Emmy award-winning playwright based in Chicago. His musical, The 100 Dresses, co-written with Grammy nominee Ralph Covert, was commissioned by Chicago Children's Theater and premiered off-Broadway at the Atlantic Theater Company in New York City. His play, Lift Every Voice, co-written with Willie Round, won the AATE Distinguished Play Award in 2022. Their film, Broke Down Drone, has played film festivals around the world and won Best Narrative Short at the Chicago Indie Film Festival and Best of the Fest at the Chain NYC Film Festival. Mills has twice been awarded the Joseph Jefferson Award for Best New Work for his plays Sawdust and Spangles and Streeterville, both co-written with Covert. And as echoed before, has won several Emmy Awards for The Lost Story of Emmett Till, Trial in the Delta with his collaborators. Now, we know Anthony Moseley, but so rarely is he sitting in the guest chair. So I'm going to share that Anthony Moseley has led Collaboraction as artistic director since 1999, using theater to foster social change in Chicago. He's commissioned thousands of artists and spearheaded projects like Sketchbook, Peacebook, and Encounter festivals, as well as the Light Youth Artist Activist Program. As a writer and director, Moseley created the Crime Scene series, This Is Not a Cure for Cancer, Connected, A Blue Island in the Red Sea, and co-created Moonset Sunrise. During the pandemic, he expanded Collaboraction's digital presence with over 100 programs, including directing O Colonizers and Encounter Inglewood, and producing live web shows like Becoming and Crucial Conversations. Moseley is also a SAG actor, appearing in many shows, and co-created and co-directed the multi-Emmy winning The Lost Story of Emmett Till, Trial in the Delta. Hello.
Meow, meow, meow,
meow. How was that? How was that for some bias?
Thank you.
So I think to kick us off, I want to take you all back to the moment that the three of you decided to take on this story, adapt the lost transcripts. And if you could go back and tell your past selves one thing about the experience that you've had going through this journey, not just from curating the show, connecting with audiences, the awards, but diving deeply into this story, what is one thing you'd go back and tell them about what this experience led for you?
You starting?
Oh, what a great question. Thank you for the intro. And hey, someone read my bio on Collaboraction Radio. She knows how to make me happy. Okay, you kind of asked a two-part question. I want to address the first part first, which is that when the transcript landed in our world, Gary, Willie, and I had been kind of already running together pretty hard for a couple years, having produced Broke Down Drone, Lift Every Voice, Broke Down Drone, New York. And so we had a groove, and it just seemed like our destiny was just to not stop the groove, And we all, three of us, each connected with each other in very beautiful, what I call synchro destiny kind of ways. And then Gary and I reconnected while walking past each other in a hallway, a stairway at Steppenwolf. And I'll save that for later. But I guess my point is that it felt like this was happening, and we were just going along for the ride, and the doors were opening up as we had the courage to just walk at them. And I attribute that to the magic and the genius of Mamie Till. If I were to say one thing to myself back then, from today, it would be, I guess, really just trust that everything we needed to take on the task at hand, we had. And just to reinforce that, because it was stressful at times. And that it's bigger than all of us. And it's I feel like for the three of us, in many ways, had we not connected along the way, we might not all be here today on this show. And I think I just want to remind anybody who's in the beginning of your career or the middle of your career and you're going through some difficult times or dry times, you never know what's right around the corner. Don't stop until you can't go further, but keep on going, because there might be something really special awaiting you, like a project like this, which we've just been privileged and lucky to be able to help bring to life.
Yeah, I echo all of that. I think if I were going to tell my younger self one thing, it would be strap in, because this project is going to take you places you never thought. It's going to introduce you to people you never thought you'd meet. It's going to reveal things about, just the tragedy and the courage of Mamie Till and the courage of, Willie Reed and everybody else. It's going to be an incredible adventure, and it's going to touch a lot of people. I just remember the day Anthony got the transcripts. And it's 400, 500 pages, whatever it was, of just raw transcripts that are pretty boring and a lot of procedural things. And we had to try to figure out, how can we make this compelling drama without creating or manufacturing anything that's not already on the page. And so it was an excavation of that trial. And I think just the journey we've been on with it keeps going. It keeps going. It touches so many people. And the fact that the trial has never been, we have the script now that's available. Like, people can read the trial and read everything that happened. And we didn't manufacture any of it. It's all from the trial. And so people now can purchase that. We also have to shout out Dana Anderson, who was Anthony's co-director on it, who was the fourth member of the production team, who really brought incredible insights to the rehearsal process. And we couldn't have done it without her. But it's been an amazing ride, and we've just felt honored and privileged to bring Mamie and Emmett's story forward and just be a tiny, tiny part of keeping their memory alive. So strap in would be what I tell my younger self.
Ditto to everything that they said. For me, it would be not only strap in and get ready for the ride, but also paying my dues to my culture, paying my dues to Mamie Till, and making sure that, like we said, keep that casket still open and that information out there, because these were hidden for a reason. And the fact that we got a hand in, shedding light on something that was meant to be never, hit the mainstream is beautiful. So for me, it would just be just paying your dues, get ready to be immersed in history and learn. I mean, I've grown up as a young black boy in Chicago, just like Emmett Till was. I was 14, once young as well, and things like that. So just paying my dues is what I look at it as, and keeping Mamie Till and Emmett Till and the whole Till family legacy still alive, and never let people forget what happened that day.
Definitely. And I think, and you've perfectly segued into kind of my next thought line for you all, which is in relation to, why this opportunity. There seems to be a resurgence in interest in Emmett Till's story with the 2016 release of Mamie. The Chicago History Museum just announced a new exhibit for Emmett Till. There was a couple of TikToks this last few months that went viral of people sharing their experience at the African American History Museum, specifically at Emmett Till's exhibit. So there seems to be a more recent resurgence in the last 10 years or so. So why, for you, did you feel you had to be a part of it? And as you think about your experience, Willie, you mentioned, you being a Black boy from Chicago, living that experience. I'd be curious as to, for all three of you, taking a step back from, this incredible source material, the ability to impact history by bringing it to light and giving homage to the family. How for you did this resonate, and why? Why did you feel called to it?
Well, for me, it was very personal because I recently found out, like 4 months ago, from my security guard officer, the officer that was security in our school, our grammar school at the time, Henson Elementary School I went to at the time, and we had this substitute teacher, and I remember just being a class clown, bad, and we were so bad that this elderly woman had to leave, and like they came up there, and I remember the security guard telling us, y'all know, asking us, do you guys know who mother that is? And I remember hearing Emmett Till's name when I was a kid, and that was his mom, Mamie Till, that was
your
that we were acting
teacher.
Up on. Wow. So for me, it's a very personal story. Like I said, it also gives me that chance to, honor my history and pay my dues back to, my culture and the legacy. I mean, this sparked the civil rights movement to, start. And it's because of the courage of Mamie Till that, like Anthony said, we even have this, and this story is it means a lot to me because of growing up in Chicago. I got family from Mississippi. All the mothers have, growing up in a Black household, you have those talks of what not to do, especially with officers and things like that. It's the same thing with Emmett Till going down to the South, and so living it, and just being immersed in it now and being able to develop this work and get it out there for people, it means a great deal for me because knowledge is power, Yeah, so.
Yeah, I hadn't heard, but I grew up in Minnesota and we had no history lesson on Emmett Till. So I moved to Chicago when I was 18 and didn't hear anything about Emmett Till until I think David Barr, the playwright, had a play at Pegasus Players, I believe, in the mid-90s, late 90s, that dealt with the Emmett Till story. And that was my first time even being exposed to it, which was crazy that it's just not part of history that's taught. And so I've always been intrigued by it, fascinated by it, amazed by the courage of Mamie Till and what she did and leaving that casket open and what it sparked. So when the project came to us, and we didn't even hesitate to say, how can we help? How can we add value to this? How can we bring the story forward?
Yeah, wow. In 2012, I really made a commitment to create work specifically aimed at the root cause of violence in Chicago. And although I was quite ignorant back then, I had an open heart and a curious mind. And it turns out those are the two most important things you need as a white person to activate yourself as part of the solution in Chicago. And so I had been on my own trajectory of learning, growing, and producing work for a decade. And in some ways, I feel like I was preparing for this opportunity. And Mamie's just absolute brilliance changed the way we are as a country. She shifted our whole narrative. And you think it's bad now, which I do. Without Mamie, so many other great civil rights leaders, artists might not have been given the platform. Dr. King, Rosa Parks, and we could go on and on and on. Yep. What Mamie did in the whole of our country, this project and this story can also do inside of each one of us. It can shift us to transform to be a more humane, loving piece of our communities. So, in many ways, this project has allowed me to take all that I've been given and help it be a part of the solution. So, like Gary said, we really had no idea where this would take us, and the journey is not over. And I also want to say that the contents of the play are absolutely horrific. And the descriptions of what happened to Emmett are just really, really horrible, gruesome violence to a young Chicago boy who was an absolute charismatic, joyful, brilliant young man. And while working on the play, we sometimes get a little numb to that because we're looking at costumes and blocking and light and eye contact, and the audience reminds us of the importance of the story, how horrific it was, and how important it is that everyone, especially white Chicagoans, white Americans, white folks from Tallahatchie County, understand not just the story, but what happened in the courtroom, the lack of justice that was served, so that we can all try to make it right.
And there's so much to that that I find really profound about this particular piece relating to Emmett Till, because each of you in different ways have spoken to this concept of bravery, and in the kind of cultural zeitgeist when it comes to Emmett Till's story, it is often attributed specifically in relation to Mamie's choice to have the casket open and kind of showcasing the gruesome nature of what was done to Emmett Till. What I really appreciate about this show in particular is it zeroing in on the strength of presence and how, especially as Black women in this country and in Chicago, you know, the oftentimes you will see that these stories are greenlit if they are if there's regular exposure to violence. There's even memes about, you know, Tyler Perry's films about how they're constantly, you know, referencing Black women in the struggle and getting themselves out. And so with Mamie Till's story, right, we've seen those elements of her fighting to, I think even the movie centers around her making the choice to bring the casket up to Chicago and have it be open. But what is really powerful to me about this story and how you all conducted it was that it centers on her strength of being present enough to be in that courtroom day after day and listening to the rhetoric day after day and listening to what they did day after day, and the sneering and the laughing and the yelling and the heat, and that she showed up and showed up and showed up despite her own grief, so that it would be documented, so that 70 years later we'd be sitting here now. This show does a phenomenal job of showcasing the power of presence beyond violence. And so I want to ask you all, as you kind of reflect on your process, how did you go about choosing the excerpts that you did to highlight in the show? And maybe talk to our audience about the methodology behind centering the specific vignettes of the case that you did for the story. Excellent question. So Anthony handed us the 400, 500 pages of transcript, and we had a very short amount of time to turn it around. I think at first we were going to shoot it in a month. Oh, wow. You said you needed a month. And so we pushed every project we had on the docket aside, and Willie and I went straight at it. And the first thing we did was separately, you take the 400 pages and highlight what you think, which testimony, which characters, which scenes you think should be in. I'm going to do the same thing. And then we're going to come together in a week or a few days or however long it took, and we're going to put them side by side and see how we agree. And it was incredible how
when we put them side by side, it was almost exact. It was very similar of these witnesses don't add anything. They're not important to the story. This part is repetitive, so we can get rid of that. And that's how we started, was just starting to carve and find the narrative in this, you know, pretty boring play or a pretty boring court transcript. How can we make that into a riveting play? And it was just pulling things away and finding the driving narrative. And a lot of it was there because it was, the testimony is, you can feel the electricity in the room when Willie Reed, this young boy, takes the stand, knowing his life is never going to be the same, knowing he could be killed, he might have to flee and never come back to his home, and just knowing that or Mo's right, Uncle Mo's, when he points the finger at the white defendant saying that's the murder right there and it had never been done, knowing that's going to change his life as well, and he could end up like Emmett Till very easily. And so those scenes just jumped off the page, really. And so that's where we started. And then the interesting thing was, we couldn't wait to get to find the closing arguments, because we had read, you know, saying, oh, these closing arguments are electric and they're just incredible and they go on for an hour. But when we got the transcripts and we flipped to the back to the closing arguments, there were none. They weren't in the transcripts. So that became a challenge where we're like, we've got to go find this. We've got to go find this information that wasn't captured in the transcript. So we had to start researching. We found newspaper articles. We found experts. There's a professor in Salt Lake City who had studied extensively. We reached out to him and said, where can you help us? Are there any things? And we found pieces of these closing arguments, and we had to recreate them.
Wow.
And for me, it's my favorite part of the script. So if you buy the script and you get to those closing arguments, they are riveting. And if you see it on NBC, or if you see the production, those closing arguments by those attorneys are riveting. And so that was the most interesting, is we had to piece those back together and find those and rebuild those because they didn't exist in the court transcript.
So the Mamie Till monologue at the end as well. And I think that was the most moving part for me, and us, you know, formulating something other than what was already in the transcripts, was formulating Mamie Till's last monologue. And it's because it's taken from her words verbatim of an interview that she did. And I was actually just watching that interview on the way here, and man, the way that she describes every aspect of her son, you know, his eye was in the middle of his cheek, and when she's looked on the side of his head, she saw a bullet hole and she could see daylight on the other side. And, you know, you understand why it's so heartfelt, and that's the last moment, but you understand when you hear her say these words that this is what her seeing her son like that motivated her to open that casket and to have this entire, you know, situation, you know, put in front of America. And yeah, so yeah,
that last speech, we really wanted for the play, which is not in the NBC. In the NBC production, wasn't part of it. It was in the original play that we wrote, but it wasn't part of the NBC production. That final monologue from Mamie Till, we wanted to center her at the end of the play, and we wanted that final moment after the verdict comes in for her to break the fourth wall, step forward, and talk to us in 2024 and say, here's what you need to know about this. I'm gone. But these words that I said are going to stay forever. And those words, what she says, we could use them right now. We're going to be able to use them in 10 years. They're just so powerful of how she brings the lessons from what happened to her son and how we can all take forward the lessons and make a change in our life.
We are each other's business.
Yeah, we are each other's business. He was the universal child.
Yeah, the choice to have that specific phrasing of, I thought it was sufficient enough to mind my own business. I didn't know that everything was my business. I know significantly resonated with people of color I've known who've seen that, because it isn't enough to just exist and keep your head down and be polite or palatable, because you have to be hyper aware. And that was such a standout line that was chosen. I know for me as an audience member, I was like it just really struck, because it resonates so deeply. But as you said, it continues to be a consistent narrative. And that, you know, leads me to, you know, this concept of Emmett Till's everywhere. That was 70 years ago. I mean, do you have time? There's been so many since then, right? And so as we look at today and the concerns in our communities around the potential abolition of the Department of Education and the already pretty consistent degradation of our educational systems, hearing that in the 90s, up until then, you had never even heard the story before, or in my context, never having heard of Collaboraction, some of our viewers already know this, never heard of Collaboraction, never heard of Trial in the Delta, of course heard of Emmett Till because of my experience in this country, but had not heard of this and was invited by a friend to see the screening, and was surrounded by folks who had never, in Highland Park, who had never heard of the story before. What's next to continue not only Mamie's legacy of awareness and proactive cultural accountability and advocacy, but what's next to have the last Emmett Till? What did she tell you in these writings, or what did her lawyer or did different testimonies tell you about kind of the pathway for us to get beyond more transcripts?
I think you just mentioned it, where she says, I had 6 rooms and a nice car and a great life, and I was fine. I was snug as a bug. And then I realized I have work to do, and this is everybody's business, and I've got to step forward and have my voice heard. That's the lesson I take away, is that if you have privilege, use your privilege. If you need to build awareness because this is something you didn't know about, go learn, go understand, go try to dig deeper. I think just get involved, have a voice, do more is what I took from Mamie Till.
And you know, there are so many Emmett Tills in Chicago, but there are also so many Mamie Tills. And you know, I think of Shapiro Wells, and if you haven't listened to her Pulitzer finalist podcast, Somebody, by Invisible Institute and iHeartRadio and Topic Studios, go listen to that amazing piece. If you know the story of Cleopatra Pendleton, who is the mother of Hadiya, who is, you know, leading Hadiya's Promise, a 501c3, in Hadiya's name, Maria Pike, our board member. There's too large of an amazing army of moms who are still every day waking up to serve the memory of their lost child. And I think the thing about me for that monologue is it's Mamie Till saying, even I thought, and I was wrong, but look at what she did. And so all we have to do is turn on the switch and get activated and become a part of the solution. And if just sitting on the sidelines and giving good vibes and smiles is not enough, figure out what you have that you can contribute in a long-term, meaningful way and become part of unwinding our history of inequity and oppression in Chicago.
I think that's... sorry.
No, I mean, yeah.
I was just going to highlight, I think that's where engaging in crucial conversation is so critical, because sometimes it's that taking that step forward and just opening yourself up to the dialogue is part of that work. Centering again on my initial experience seeing the screening of this production, seeing kind of folks in the audience's eyes glaze over as people were sharing different stories about their trials and tribulations, mostly, you know, Black folks sharing how they continue to be impacted by these tales, and just seeing kind of eyes glaze over because, you know, it's not a shared experience. And then not just myself, but a few others standing up and saying, okay, let's reframe this as to how you can empathize with grief, how you can empathize with pain, you can empathize with child loss potentially, or family loss, you can empathize with injustice. And as those conversations were coming to light, I'll just never forget leaving because I was one of the folks who spoke, and after I left the theater and we're on the lobby of the Wayfarer, like 2 or 3 women like came up and grabbed my forearm, and they were like, we thought it was a great production. We weren't quite getting it. until you said, think about how we felt during the Highland Park shooting, or think about how we felt when we lost a family member, or think about how we felt. And we, thank you for that. We're going to look up, the Collaboraction website and so on and so forth. And that reframing piece, which these crucial conversations after every production is going to be so critical, because I think there's a collective fatigue. I mean, I heard Gary say, get activated, begin to, utilize your privilege. Anthony said the same thing, and, pay homage to your culture. But there's also collective cultural exhaustion. And so how do you, and what would be your recommendations to audience members who are like, listen, every day I turn on Instagram, I see a genocide, I see this, I see that, I see people being hurt, I see my rights potentially be taken away, I see this story, oh, that's great, you're having a book. I'm exhausted, I'm just trying to put food on the table, right? How do I get active if I have only so much activity for me and my own, and at the same time don't want to continue to see people that I care about or my neighbors suffer? What would you say would be your advice as folks who chose to get active and balance your lives in creation in ways that it's possible to participate?
For me, I would tell them I encourage everybody to just gain as much knowledge as you can. For me, knowledge is power, and ignorant, if you continue to stay ignorant and oblivious to the real issues that's going on, then you will always, fall short. And don't be too hard on yourself. Mm-hmm. Like, nobody wants, I know for me as a black person, I don't want non-black people feeling bad. I mean, like, feel, because that's what we're supposed to do. But I don't want you to beat yourself up over, the past. Like, the only thing we can do is move forward, teach love, never spread hate, and just do as much due diligence as getting the knowledge of knowing the situation and the history. Because if we don't remember the history, it's bound to repeat itself. Mm-hmm. So it's our duty to, be aware of your environment. And, like, starting from Chicago, I don't care from where you live, start locally. Learn the history of the locals. Learn the history where you at locally, and you'll fall down that rabbit hole as you open up your mind. Mm-hmm. But don't be too hard on yourself, no matter what side of the fence you're on. I mean, as a black man, I remember looking at all the things our people went through and things like that. And I'm like, it took me aback. I was scared of the world at first. I'm like, I don't want to go out here and do anything. But then I had to snap out of it and be like, nah, the world needs me. They need me to speak up. They need me to go out and collaborate with non-black people and create these relationships, and so that we can show the world that this is not just a black story. This is our story, mm-hmm. American history. So us coming together to make sure that this casket stay open, I think it's just a great deal, and people can learn from our example. Mm-hmm. So that's just how I feel about it. If people want to learn more about the work, just gain the knowledge, and don't beat yourself up about when you find out the truth and how horrific our history can be.
Yeah, and I do think you hit a point about the fatigue. Mm-hmm. I'm very worried, because I think this last election showed that people took their eye off the ball a little bit, I think. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be a very difficult 4 years. So if these things are important to you, we're going to really have to step up now, because what's coming is going to be way worse than what's happened the last 4 years or the last 8 years. So we're really going to have to get back in the game and get their antennas up and circle the wagons and really fight for the things that need to be fought for.
I don't have the energy I used to have, and I used to have boundless energy. But I find, for me, if you can pursue the things that you are deeply personally passionate about, things that touch you to your core, and you intersect that with a spirituality that reminds yourself of the gift of being alive right now in the studio together, listening on the radio or in the very near, we are alive. We are alive for a short amount of time. We will be dead forever. And before we were born, we were dead for a long time. We are on this little tiny, perfect, magical blue dot. So if you can just tap into that reality and intersect that with something that you feel passionately about in your very being, you will find the means to march on. You will find the strength, as Mamie did, to return to Mississippi in the heat where hundreds of thousands wanted her dead, and walk into that courtroom absolutely fearless, because she was standing up for her son when nobody else would or could. And if she can do that, we can do our part.
There's something that I want to center on that's emerged relating to what Gary has highlighted about the potentiality of the next 4 years, however it may come. There is a new movement called FAFO, F around and find out, specifically from groups that voted for Kamala Harris, towards folks who did not, and are discovering how they are going to be impacted because of the misinformation that has been spewed, that unfortunately misinformed them, some of them, on their choices. And as these folks have come forward in earnest and said, wow, I was misinformed, I didn't realize, I didn't, the response quite loudly has been like, LOL, you're going to F around and you're going to find out. And I think that's the antithesis of this story. I think that in this time especially, it's critical that we are giving grace in the sense that you can acknowledge that there has been precedent that's been set. Obviously, you can acknowledge, it's something I hear often of, you should have known better. Even in stories like Emmett Till or even Trayvon Martin or George Floyd, or I can go on and on. They should have known better. You can assume. And I think assumption culture has continued to enable Emmett Tills to prevail, because if I assume that somebody else has it, or if I assume that, I'm informed in the right way, or that my neighbor would never, or my friend who's a cop would never, they may. And so in that assumption culture, it kind of creates almost this halo of protection around folks with privilege, whether you are a person of color or not, because everyone has the capacity for privilege. And so what I really want to emphasize, and why I think it's so critical, that if you resonate at all with what Willie, Gary, and Anthony and I are sharing today, you can today purchase this book and read through it. The link is on our website. Dramatic Publishing also has, it's on Dramatic Publishing right now. This is something you can have in your hands. If you didn't know the story before listening to this show, that is okay. Now you do. And so the next step is continuing to learn. And circling back to FAFO, my hope is that stories like these, collaborations, like the ones with Willie, Gary, and Anthony and others, and what we're trying to do at Collaboraction, is that if you did feel misinformed about your own history, because as Willie said, this is American history, that there are spaces where you can say, you know what, I was misinformed, or I didn't know, and I don't know where to start. I am tired, but I still want to help. Maybe it's just throwing $2 and being a member of Collaboration. Maybe it's I'll show up to a screening because it's conveniently in my neighborhood. Whatever the little victories are, I want to share that that this is the antithesis of FAFO. We want to welcome people into the discussion. We recognize folks make mistakes, and there are people who are centered in this book who made some pretty loud ones.
And that's the amazing work that Collaboration does. Mm-hmm. Nobody else is doing these justice-centered pieces specifically, putting all their energy, all their resources to creating theater that is going to make someone leave that theater thinking about things in a different way and sparking some excitement to go make a difference themselves.
Or starting a job.
Yeah, exactly.
Working at the company, in my case. No, 100%. And I think that next piece, right, is we've centered a lot on Mamie. Be very cautious about engaging the perceived Mamies of your life in having these dialogues. Because, again, what this particular piece does a really phenomenal job of doing is highlighting how allies presented themselves, whether that be through her lawyer, folks who spoke in favor. She did speak herself, but there were people who showed up for her who also felt that there was injustice. And so usually when the pendulum swings in this type of a cultural environment, there's a heavy emphasis on Black women coming back in to educate and to support in Mamie and Mammy. And now in the era of the 2025 hashtag Great Step Back, where Black women across the country are saying, you know what, we are not going to Mamie right now. This is your opportunity to step forward, as this group has, in those little victories. An example I'd like to share is the concept of the neighbor. For the first time in, I think, 6 years, a neighbor of mine left cookies at my doorstep. And my husband brought it in and said, "Oh, when was the last time your neighbor dropped cookies off?" And that used to be a common occurrence.
Community.
Do you have eggs? I'm making some. You can have a slice too. Hey, can you watch my kids? I'm not going to be home until later. Yeah. Community was a cornerstone of the American value system, and we don't have time for it. But the capitalism and ultra individualism and everything else has enabled us to forget that. And this story reminds us what happens when you do not think of yourself as a one Chicago, of a one republic, of a one group. And so I want to just commend all three of you for making it possible and bringing it to life, and not zeroing on something Gary had said about not sensationalizing it. Because, I mean, we've seen that in popular media of like this very, very clearly for entertainment value productions where it's very clearly meant to shock you and make you leave with a particular reaction. This was the momentum, as you all said, clearly was carrying itself, and you all served as the conduits. And so do yourself an immense service and get the book. If you are wanting to read and perhaps don't have the means to get a book, I am personally purchasing 3 books that we will give away from Collaboraction because of Trial in the Delta and me seeing this screening. I'm sitting in front of you today. I did not know Collaboraction existed. So I feel very passionately about what this work can do and how it can bring people together. And so
that's right. It pulled you in too.
Directly. I literally I was like, oh, this is exactly, the type of work, but it goes back to the power of theater and the power of storytelling and bringing people together. When those lights dim, you are no better or worse than anybody else sitting next to you.
Yeah. And it opens the conversations. That's what Collaboraction is really great at, is they open conversations so that we can talk about these really, really hard subjects in a very safe, compassionate, graceful environment, so we can all learn, we can all make mistakes, we can all move forward together. And I think that's the big takeaway for me being part of this process, and especially the work at Collaboraction, is just having those hard conversations. There's something I just saw recently, it's called premeditated ignorance, where it's somebody going, oh yeah, Emmett Till, I know about that. Yeah, I've heard about that. And then they move on because they want to stay ignorant. They don't, because if they have to start hearing the details and diving in, it's easier to just have a gloss over it. And so busting through premeditated ignorance with people and really opening up conversations and learning and informing and enlightening, I think that's the great thing about reading this play, seeing this play, and the work that Collaboraction does is the illumination for people and the dialogue that comes from the connection and what they see in the theater, and how that changes their life.
And a comfortability with honest discomfort.
Correct.
Just being willing to embrace it. So in the words of Willie Round from the show Moonset Sunrise, tomorrow's another day and another opportunity to make a change, to activate, to so on. So the question I have for you three is, for the audience, I should say, for you to pose to them is, tomorrow's another day, another opportunity to what?
Learn.
Grow.
Learn.
Contribute.
And I would say empathize. We can do it. Any final thoughts?
Do we have time for me to read a short piece of the
course.
prosecutor's closing argument?
Of course.
This is the Chatham, who gave the
Prosecuting the murderers.
prosecuting the murderers, and who died. He was sick. He died shortly after the
A year
trial.
later.
He's the reason why the transcripts.
No, I think it was Breland, right?
Breland gave them away.
Yes.
But so well played by Andy Luther in our production. This is just the last paragraph. It starts with a quote. "The wicked flee when no man pursueth, but the righteous are bold as a lion. Gentlemen, I am only concerned here with what is morally right or morally wrong. If your verdict is influenced by anything except the evidence, you will endanger every custom and tradition we hold dear. Emmett Till was entitled to his constitutional rights. He was entitled to his liberty, and once we go taking away his rights, then we are on the defensive and we can't complain what people do to us. Those people, outside agitators, they want J.W. Milam and Roy Bryant turned loose. If they're convicted, those people are silenced. They can't say the state of Mississippi didn't do its duty." And in these days, I think those words still really ring true. And my last word, I do want to lift up what Gary mentioned earlier, that my co-director, Dana Anderson, was just such a key piece of this project, of the staging, and what she brought to the room and to Mamie Till's performance was really special. And just wanted to send some love to my collaborator, Dana Anderson.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, as said before, you can get your copy of Trial in the Delta at dramaticpublishing.com or check out our link on Collaboration Radio or collaboration.org. Thank you so much, Willie, Gary, and Anthony, for being on the show today. If what we said or anything resonated with you, you can still participate. Feel free to send us an email, reach out to us on socials, say hi, and continue the conversation. You are welcome here to grow, learn, move forward, and empathize. And so that's Collaboration Radio. I'm Beverly, and thank you for making time today. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday.